Greetings, mortals, and welcome to a blank sheet of paper.
So I tried to get Word to work, but Word is not working appropriately, so I'm going to be using Notepad instead. So today, I'm going to be doing something a little strange. I'm going to be working on my writing. This is something that I have been working on over the course of the last week and why I haven't really been very active. So today I'm going to try to do a couple of things. I'm going to consolidate a bit of the information that I've been working on over the past week, as well as hopefully do some tense correction in the draft. So my initial manuscript has about 6 pages in it at the moment. Rather, it has a little more than 5, about 5 1/4. You can't see the original manuscript because Word is not working properly with the live stream. But that's okay, because I need to fix this all, because all of this is written in the third person, except for the last page or so, and I need to consolidate it into the first person. So, this is going to be my first time writing live. I don't usually write when other people are around in general. Like, I don't write when my wife is in the house. So it's going to be weird trying to write live. So I think I'm going to loosen myself up a bit by first consolidating what I know about the plot, because I've got a bunch of stuff in my head that I've been working out the last few days. And so we're going to start it up. So the basic plot is the basic like genre, so to speak, is a romance, suspense, so to speak. You basically have an investigation, you have a who is this guy kind of deal going on. The protagonist is Eva Bray, which is, you can tell by the video game background it's showing. And that is the protagonist of our plot. Now, the whole thing takes place in sort of generic Minnesota somewhere. I'll have to put up the actual physicality eventually, but it takes place in Minnesota because I can comfortably talk about the frigid cold of Minnesota and be able to use more evocative language than I would be with a place that I'm less familiar with. I'm also less likely to write myself into a position where I'm basically talking out of my ass. So, let's see. So that's the primary protagonist. The male lead is named Dorian Kane, and he has a secret that we're going to be finding out over the course of the plot. Now, by the way, this, for anyone who cares about spoilers, don't listen to this anymore if you intend to actually read this book of mine. I figured that the overlap between the people who would be interested in reading my book and the people who currently watch my live stream is close to 0. So I don't think there's too much risk of that. But if you're going to be reading the book and you care about spoilers, don't keep watching this, because I will be talking about the fundamental plot and all that stuff. So anyway, Eva is 25-ish. I haven't solidified her age yet. And she is I believe she's a recent master's graduate. Let's see. She just graduated from college. If she's 25, she's probably got a master's. But anyway, she has a business degree of some sort, and she's currently looking for a job. Dorian Kane is, of course, the guy who's providing the job. So Dorian Kane is his current name, but he hasn't always gone by that name. So his name is internally designed to be representing something, because it amuses him to call himself Dorian Kane for reasons that will become clear later. And I think that we have given the people who care about spoilers plenty of time to get the hell out of here. So, Dorian Kane is a 1,200-year-old Viking / accountant. I always love calling him an accountant, and all the people that I talk to say, he can't be an accountant. Accountants aren't sexy. He's not actually an accountant. He's a large business owner. Slash king, technically. Basically, he, many years ago, gained control of some, like, small Caribbean island that he is now the king of, and so he's actually the monarch of a country. But that's not where he hangs out. He hangs out in Minnesota because, you know, he's a Viking, and Vikings, you can't take him out of the cold for too long. So anyway, he got stranded in America during the old Viking failed colonization period. I don't know why I'm typing the same words that I'm talking, but you know, this is a first time for me. So, and he was always more of a merchant. Then he was never really a big pillager. That was not his thing. He probably had brothers who were, you know, into the whole Yahoo, let's go pillage everyone thing. But his background has always been more mercantile. And while the Vikings have a reputation for their pillaging, that wasn't what they were all doing all the time. And so his background is much more business oriented. He hasn't really spent a lot of time with the pillaging, but he did likely take part tense. So he likely took part in a raid at some point, and he is, as a result, a strict pacifist. He will not engage in combat of any sort. He can't do it because he, you know, had some bad experiences back then with what it means to be in combat. So he is a strict pacifist. And let's see, what else do we know about him? Let's see. He speaks several languages. When you live for 1,200 years, it's not hard to pick up languages along the way. Fluently, I guess. Let's see, and so he has several languages that he's fluent in, and he has business relations pretty much all over the world. So you'll note that I have much more invested into figuring this character out than figuring out Eva, because Eva is much more straightforward because she's not a supernatural 1,200-year-old Viking. Eva's more coherent. So, I'm going to go ahead and give some background to poor Eva here. So she is going to be... she's going to be intelligent and driven. She doesn't have any meaningful business contacts, which is, of course, why she's looking for a job at the beginning here. Otherwise, someone who's intelligent and driven, if they had any business contacts, they'd get out of school and immediately have a job. So why doesn't she have any business contacts? Not sure. She has a very strong relationship with her mother. I don't know about her father. I actually hadn't thought about her father at all, now that I think about it. I have a good idea of how her relationship with her mother works, because I'm guessing that it'll be It's her relationship with her mother. I understand. It's they're probably going to talk on the phone at least every couple of days, and just they're very comfortable. They're friends, right? And so they talk to each other a lot. Her father, I don't actually know. So one of the things that I need to do is develop the relationship with the father and figure out who he is. The mother is a little easier for me because I can steal from real life there and get an idea of what's going on. The father, not so much. I haven't seen those relationships personally very much. So I'll have to figure out more about her father. So anyway, let's go back to the fundamental. So let's go to his fundamental mechanics. So every 20 to 30 years, he dies and is replaced. So the basic gist here is that he doesn't actually have any children, or at least he doesn't have any recently. He might have had some when he was younger. He very likely did have some when he was in America before the other colonists finally showed up. He very likely had children, and he presumably joined one of the local tribes. All of this stuff doesn't need to be that detailed in terms of what tribes he was interacting with, things like that, because quite frankly he doesn't really remember very clearly, because the human brain is not designed to live 1200 years. So his memories of things that are this far back are pretty patchwork. He doesn't have the strong memory. I remember my teenage years reasonably well. He's not going to be able to remember his teenage years or his first century or things like that very well. He'll have some memory of it, particularly the stuff that gets sort of refreshed, but he has very limited memory, and so he's not gonna, it doesn't matter. I don't need to come up with all the details of his life at this point because it doesn't really matter. Let's see, what was I saying? The other convenient thing about his spotty memory of his early years is that it means that while I do have to do some research on the details of Viking culture and things like that, which I've done a little bit of research on, I don't need to get really in-depth because there's never going to be an in-depth conversation between him and someone else about his early life. So, back to this. So he doesn't actually have any children right now. But what he does is that every 20 to 30 years, he's going to get someone to basically get involved in a scam with him. So he basically pretends to knock up one of his random servants and then sends her away to his kingdom, where she basically lives in a tropical paradise and now helps him out with his business. Back in the day, not so much, because there was no way to really effectively communicate. But for the past 100 or so years, he's been having his sort of fake mistress help him out with his business and stuff like that. So he's getting women to get in on this sort of scam that he's got running, and he's letting them know that he's immortal and he needs to, because he looks like about 25-ish, right? That's the age that he looks like he is, his apparent age, because he doesn't actually get older physically. So since he doesn't get older physically, he needs to basically pretend to be someone else periodically. So every 20 to 30 years, he knocks someone up and then replaces himself with his new version, so to speak, so that he can maintain that he doesn't want to go above the age of maybe 40 or so without having replaced himself with the previous iteration. At any rate, I'll deal with the specifics of that later. So the current plot is that he's bringing this Eva woman over to his place in order to basically get her in on this scheme of his. So he's currently looking for he's looking for a personal assistant who he's going to pretend that there's some, like, improper business going on with, but there's never any actual improper business. He hasn't gotten involved romantically in centuries because people are very short-lived and it's extremely painful to outlive a lover. So he hasn't been getting anywhere near that kind of stuff. He hasn't been doing that for many years. So anyway, but he has been trying to find the smartest women around who he can, like, get to join him on this business venture because it allows him to sort of have someone around that's sort of an intellectual equal that he can talk to. So anyway, so at the moment he probably has two active conspirators, not former conspirators. So he has currently about 2 active conspirators. So he has the woman who he most recently got involved with, and then the woman prior, who both are living on his kingdom and are both handling different parts of his international business ventures. So I don't really know too much about these women, other than one of them is older and one of them is still relatively young. So she's probably 40-ish, something like that. So and they basically work for him. They handle his business assets, and they live in a tropical paradise, which is always good. And they make decent amount of money, by which they probably make a fuck ton of money. Shush money from a king is always useful. So let's see. This is so weird. Live streaming this is very odd. Let's see. So anyway, one of them handles his African investments, and one of them probably handles his Middle Eastern investments, based off of his schedule that I've set up. He also does not sleep, because fuck sleep. I hate sleep. As an insomniac, any character that I can justify not sleeping doesn't sleep. So he doesn't sleep, and he cannot be physically altered. Now, that has a few important implications. He can eat, but he cannot digest. Well, I say he cannot digest, but he can digest. It's just that it doesn't go into his body. So the food gets sort of broken down the same way that it normally would, but it doesn't go anywhere. Well, it doesn't go into his body. You know what happens to it. So, so he doesn't. When he ingests things, he can eat them. He can digest them normally. Whether he eats or not, though, doesn't matter. He can go without eating for an infinite period of time. He can go hundreds of years without eating, without any ill effects, other than not being able to enjoy food. He obviously can have, you know, he can eat too much, presumably, and that will, like, involve too much food being in there. I actually do not know what would happen internally if he ate too much food. Is he capable of giving himself a stomach ache? I wonder. He's not capable of being physically altered. I would think... I don't actually know. I don't know, because stomachs are elastic. And I don't know if that elasticity would count as it doesn't count as a change, no, because you can move your arms and that's an elastic change. So I would think that he's not actually capable of giving himself a stomach ache from having it stretch to the point of unpleasantness. But I could be wrong there. He might be able to give himself a stomach ache. Not to physically harm himself by consuming too much, because it can never rupture. But he might be able to get to the point of physical discomfort, and it might be one of the only ways that he can experience physical discomfort. He also breathes, but does not need to. All of the fundamental things that sort of are required for human survival are not required, because his body is basically like locked to a certain degree of stasis. He cannot be physically punctured or damaged in any way. If you hit him really hard, he might be thrown by the what's the word? By the momentum. Like, he might be physically moved, but he will never have any damage done to his body or his person because of it. And anyway, but that's his only special power is immortality. He does not have any sort of super strength. He's not super strong. He's not super fast or anything like that. He's just basically normal aside from that. He's reasonably fit, because he was reasonably fit when he achieved immortality. But he's not like a bodybuilder type buff. He's not that. But he is reasonably fit. So, because, back then you kind of had to be, even if you were a merchant. So, this is so weird. Okay. Let's see. So anyway, those are our primary sort of protagonists. So he sort of fakes his own death and replaces himself with his fake son, which is actually just him, periodically. But in addition to that, he also has to go into sort of like a hermit phase at a certain point, which is a phase where he stops really interacting with people in person, because he's just getting too old for people to not notice that he's not getting old. Like, he's supposed to be about 40, maybe 45, and he looks like a 25-year-old, and that causes people to gossip. So rather than people gossiping about the correct things, he wants people gossiping about the wrong things. So he goes into a hermit phase eventually, and this may follow his sort of scandal thing, like shortly after, kicking the girl out, to save the family shame or whatever. He basically just goes to hermit mode, where he just stops seeing people. Now, before, he used to communicate exclusively through letters and things like that, but nowadays he has phones. He's very active in his business stuff still. So, when we start the plot, he's currently in a hermit phase. He's either currently in a hermit phase or he's about to start one. I'm actually not positive on that. I was originally planning for him to be in a hermit phase already, and I don't know whether I want to do that or not now. I was thinking about it, and I also got some commentary that hermits aren't sexy, so there's that to consider. But also, it gives me a bit more to play with if he's got more stuff going on. So if there are more people around the house, because if he's in hermit phase, it's just going to be him and her around the mansion. And if I can put more characters into the mansion itself, that is actually beneficial for me. So I kind of like the idea of him not being in a hermit phase at the moment, and that he goes into hermit phase immediately after this phase. So maybe he's about 30. If he's about 30, he's probably been around for maybe 8 years since his last let's update this. So if he's about 30, he's probably been around for between 5 and 8 years in this current iteration as Dorian. So yeah. So my thinking here is that he probably has some people that are around the house. So he should have... Yeah, okay. So he's not in his hermit phase yet, which means that I'm going to need to rewrite certain scenes, unfortunately, but that's okay. We don't have a lot written so far. It's only like 5 pages of writing, and it all needs to be rewritten anyway for the perspective. Well, not all of it needs to be rewritten for perspective, but a decent amount needs to be rewritten for perspective. Okay, so he's about 30. And let's see, he should have a gardener. He should have... Who else? He should have a gardener. Oh, he has a pool tender. He has someone to handle the pools. And mechanic, possibly. And what else? There could be a current installation going on if I decide to do that. And anything else that's really critical? I don't believe so. He wouldn't need someone to clean the house for him because he is not a terribly dirty person, and he can clean things up himself pretty easily. In addition, if he's living alone and the only people that he has around are people that work outside for the most part, he actually will generate virtually no dust, because the majority of the dust that you see is actually the life cycle of dust mites. And yes, I did research into dust mites for this book. And dust mites actually require living creatures around to basically feed off of. And the interesting thing about his condition is that he, by the nature of his existence, he does not actually shed skin, because he doesn't physically change in any way. His hair doesn't grow, right? His hair just remains the same length all the time. And so, since his hair doesn't grow and his skin doesn't shed, there's no there's nothing for those dust mites to eat because they can't eat lint. So if you look at house dust, almost all of house dust is human skin and hair and things like that, and dust mites, and dust mite corpses and feces. That's what it is. Almost all of it. And then a small, but the only other sizable chunk of household dust is lint from your clothing. So that's basically it for household dust contribution. So if Dorian cleans his clothes very effectively and gets most of the lint off when he buys new clothing, he gets all the lint off immediately. He'll have a degree of dust buildup because of that, but predominantly there won't be dust. He won't be developing dust around the house, and he certainly will not have any dust mites because they can't survive. So if you go about 3 months without any living creatures in a house, the dust mites should conceivably die because that's about how long they can. That's about their the length of their life cycle. So if all the dust mites can't eat anything for 3 months, then they all just die out. Theoretically, I mean, I haven't actually done research on dust mite extermination via starvation. That's not a thing that I've done. But certainly in a house that doesn't have any humans in it or doesn't have any animals in it, that is, for a long period of time, they just can't survive in that environment. So, anyway, that being said, do I have anyone that needs... Does he need an internal... I don't think so. He might be a bit of a hermit anyway, actually. Like, he might be visible, but not someone that does a lot of stuff in person, even before his hermit phase starts. He might mostly just talk to people on the phone. So anyway, that's what we've got for him so far. So now let's get into the actual plot. So we've got a couple things brewing. We've got, first of all, the romantic tension between the protagonist and Dorian. So Eva and Dorian having their little thing and, you know, getting lost in each other's eyes and all that, you know, kind of nonsense, because romance is nonsense, people. I'm an old Grinch. No. So the two of them get along well, they like each other, they're physically attracted to each other, etc. That leads to what it typically leads to. And so that's one plot. But in addition to that plot line, we also have another plot line that I came up with the other day because I was feeling like we didn't really have an antagonist. We didn't really have there wasn't really a strong impetus for her to snoop or anything like that. So there was, unless he did something dumb, there would be no conflict. So what is the fundamental conflict? And then it occurred to me that, especially with, like, the way that Russia and China have been behaving recently, the Cold War could restart, especially with the current political situation. So what I was thinking is that the CIA might start doing some Cold War era shenanigans and start looking into dealing with people that are, or not people, dealing with countries that are a bit too friendly to certain powers. So he has strong ties in Asia. He has been, you know, in the global market, his little kingdom has strong trade relations worldwide. and he has ties in Singapore and China and Japan and all those other places. So he's a strong trader generally everywhere, where he just kind of gets involved everywhere. So anyway, as a result of this, the CIA wants to keep an eye on what's going on there, and his inheritance is really suspicious if you look at it too closely. His family dies young because they die before the age of 50 usually, which back in the day, totally reasonable. People just died left and right for whatever reason, right? It's easy to justify in the 1800s, oh, the king died at the age of 45 because he got an infected toe. Whatever, right? Anything could kill him. Nowadays, it's very rare for someone to die that young, and it was for the previous generation and the previous generation as well. So we have 3 generations of very young deaths, in addition to a son that kind of just appears out of nowhere. The people kind of knew that he existed, but nobody could identify him on sight. So that's really suspicious. So the CIA has been looking into it, and they have a couple of different angles that they could be doing. Now, most likely their assumption is going to be that what's going on is that this is ostensibly a monarchy, but in practice, it's a dictatorship where the previous dictator is peacefully transferring power to the next dictator, who they choose themselves via this weird conspiracy shit. That's probably what they're going to think is going on. But it's probably not the narrative that they're going to give to someone that they would be using if they decide to do something to basically delegitimize the current king and put someone else in power, or put a democracy in power, do any of the shenanigans that America tends to get involved in. So what's going on there is going to be they're going to basically accuse him of murdering the previous prince and king and being a false claimant, that he just came out of nowhere. He's not actually this person. He's actually just he's stolen the identity of this prince. So that's what they're going with there, which is something that they're going to be telling Eva, because as soon as Eva gets into his organization as a personal assistant, the CIA is going to be sending people over to have a talk to her. So the CIA is going to be asking her to snoop around and try and find more information and get some sort of proof of any of his get basically proof that he's not who he says he is. And so she's going to be having a reason to sort of snoop around, maybe listen in on conversations that she's not supposed to be listening in on, things like that. And over time, she's going to sort of come to her own conclusions about what's going on here. And, shenanigans ensue. So simultaneously, she's going to be dealing with the fact that she really likes this guy, while simultaneously, is he a murderer? Right? Like, is this guy actually a murderer who killed the previous king? And so that's the fundamental, that's where the conflict originates. And that conflict is going to basically culminate in him telling her who he is and what's going on, telling him about the, conspiracy that he gets up to. But in addition, because of the fact that things are changing, his old strategy just doesn't work very well anymore. The CIA is already fully aware that something weird is going on. They just haven't figured out what yet. And so he's not going to be able to just keep pulling this off. So with him not being able to pull this off anymore, he's got to figure out what he's going to do instead. And so sort of the end of the book is going to be them coming up with a plan and what they're going to do and this, that, or the other thing, and the two of them get together and blah 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 blah. So all that kind of stuff happens as the end of the book. So I think that's about what we need for this. So I could I think I'm going to make an attempt at any rate. I don't usually write with like people around, so I don't think I need all of this stuff. Actually, I'll just do this. I'm going to just start writing this. Basically, I'm rewriting the initial opening scene in the first person, and I don't know if it's going to come out good or not. We'll just have to see. So I'll just start rewriting this in the first person and see how it goes. To completely rewrite the sentence. I'm actually going to copy paste this so that you guys can see the original. I'm going to copy here. That doesn't make sense. Okay. So here's the original sentence, the original paragraph that I'm working on. So I'm trying to pump up the second sentence, get it a bit nicer. I'm not sure how I feel about my rewrite of the second, the previous third sentence, the current second sentence. This tense is wrong. Have had doesn't work. though. It's weird starting from the past tense and then doing a hypothetical future within the past tense. I actually don't know the rules for that. So okay, well, we'll live with that for now. I actually don't know these days how useful newspaper ads are. So the next sentence references like physical medium, and I'm not sure how useful those classifieds actually are. I would guess that she would have to go through them anyway. Anyway. By the way, I find every sentence that I write to be ugly and embarrassing. So you'll see me cringing a lot as I write. This one doesn't need to be altered because tense doesn't matter, it's just a direct quote. second. I don't know why I thought that. That's really dumb. English! We're in new territory now. Not because I haven't written anything here, but because when you go to first person, it changes the plot fundamentally. First person is more evocative than third. Third person limited is what people typically write in. And it has the advantage that you can tell the story from multiple characters' perspectives, as well as increasing the size of the frame. So in third person, I can talk about things that the main character doesn't see, even if I'm strictly following the main character. So as an example, if I have a character drive into a driveway and then drive away, I can say in third person that the character who's driving away didn't see the person watching them from the window. There's a figure in the window watching. Even though I'm following that character, the frame for the viewer, or sorry, for the reader, is extended a little bit beyond that character to the entire scene around that character. Whereas with a strict first-person narrative, you can only tell what the character experiences. You can cheat a bit, and especially if you're writing it as like a memoir or some other thing where the character has written it in the future, right? If you're doing something like that, then you can cheat a bit and say things that the character doesn't see at the time, but then later on found out about. You can do that, but it's always going to be a little weird and iffy. So anyway, there's a fundamental difference in the scope and the frame. I might want to redo this as first. It's present tense, but I've never written in present tense before. I'm going to have to look at some of the. I have some romance novels that I was reading for research a couple of years back, because when I first started working on this, I eventually gave up on it because I decided I couldn't sell it. But then I came back to it because it's a project that I really like. At any rate, so I need to think. Do I want? So anyway, I'm going to go look back at those and see whether those are more written in present tense. Because present tense is even more evocative. So we'll see. We'll see. I haven't written in that, and I don't have a lot of experience with it. But for now, I'm just going to change the tense, or change the perspective. But at any rate, because it's more evocative, you need to use better language, and you need to use you need to go into a bit more detail about certain things that you wouldn't necessarily go into detail about if it was in third person. You just focus on slightly different things in third versus first. So as a result, I have to change the wording, and the fundamentals of this paragraph are a little changed. Okay, so this is an ugly sentence. I need to think about how I'm going to rewrite this. I'm trying to figure out the exact wording that I want here because the wording that I'm thinking of, all the versions of this sentence that I've got in my head are ugly and I don't like them. Those are words that you'll hear a lot if you listen to me talk about my writing, by the way. It's ugly. I hate it. Ugh. This sentence is just ugly. My wife hates it. She's just like... When I talk to my wife about my writing and about sentence structure and things like that, I tend to use very dismissive wording like ugly, disgusting, filthy, and she always just kind of rolls her eyes at me because it's like I don't know how to describe it other than it's ugly and it's wrong and I can't. No, you just don't do that. It's icky. I might have to go with an ugly sentence here though to get my point across. So the basic gist here is that I need to get in the information of email address to which you send a resume, which is then ignored. And because it's such a composite thought, I'm having difficulty coming up with a concise way of phrasing it that I like. Okay, I got it. I'm just going to cut email address out of it entirely. I don't need the email address part. So... I still don't like it. Just find out. This is... I'm on the right track here, though. This is... It's good enough. It's good enough for this paragraph for now. It's something that I'll look into later. I'll look into fixing that later. It's okay. It's not as hideous as it could be. Let me just paste that into the original document since I already have that much. Okay, so... Okay, I'm going to go ahead and copy this next line that I'm working on. So this is the next paragraph that I'm working with. Okay, I will be right back. Oh, I guess I don't need to look at that. I have it right here. Let's see. Actually, kind of like I was thinking of consolidating those two separate ideas. Um, I prefer to do some explanation there, though, because I actually legitimately do not know that the reader will automatically make that connection. That it's. I also don't know how I would tie the rest of the thoughts in if I don't make that connection. So this is, again, something that I don't need to change. I don't think I have to change pretty much anything about this. So this can all stay the same. Okay, so here's the next paragraph we're working with. I say that as I copy it as opposed to when I paste it. Alright. This is actually fun. I'm enjoying doing this live. It's kind of a weird thing to do, but I don't know. I find it enjoyable. I've often found that writers get asked, you know, about their process quite a lot. And just sort of going through things and changing them and doing my editing at any rate live is kind of fun. Because this is not really writing. This is editing, which is... By the way, this question is a question that I am ripping off of a dating website, and I remember it very clearly because of the fact that it's a trap. So, shit, is he the Montague or the Capulet? I don't actually know. Romeo. Montague. Okay, so I will confirm. Lord Montague is the father of Romeo. Okay, so Montague it is. Okay, so there we go. That works. Okay, so we're going to copy this, and we got the next thing on. So we don't need any of these. Okay, so obviously don't think I need all things considered. I'm just going to put the strangest one. I also just realized that this is a multiple choice test. I might want to adjust this one, and I think I do. What are you, Romeo? don't need to save. We're fine. We're saving. Save it. Alright. Let's make sure that I didn't screw up the thing here. And we're fine. Okay, so okay, I'm gonna leave them busted. I like busted. I don't think I need the attached name and email address. Was this 53? 52nd. I think that sending in. Yeah, that works. 55 is fine. Okay, so I think that's what I'm going to do for now. It's been about an hour that I've been streaming this. I say that, it's actually been about an hour and a half that I've been streaming this. I hope that this has been enjoyable for some folks. I don't know if there's anyone who's watching right now, but if you either are watching now or are watching this in the future when it's just uploaded on the channel, tell me what you think of it. I haven't done this kind of a video before, and I'm curious what people think. So thank you everyone for watching. It has been a pleasure to stream this for you today, and next time I'll probably be doing a video game or something. Goodbye.